Hey there, Broncos fans. Welcome into the Broncos Breakdown. I'm your host here, Sam Brown. Give me a follow on Twitter at SamBrownCS. Love to talk Broncos with you guys. Hope you're having a good Tuesday. I know I sure am. Throwing this shirt back to Super Bowl 50. What a time to be alive. We got a trifecta of news and rumors for you on today's show, starting with our good friend, Mel Kiper Jr. We're checking out Mel Kiper's mock draft here on the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. A two-rounder here for Mel this time around. So let's go ahead and jump right on in with the top five. Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones. Nothing too surprising there. Miami trades up to 4 for Kyle Pitts. Penei Sewell, number 5 to Cincinnati. And then as you go through the rest of the top 10, at number 6, 7, 8, you see them all. A pair of Alabama players at 7 and 8 to Detroit and Carolina. And that leaves the Denver Broncos at number 9. And who does he have the Broncos taking? Pretty simple pick here. Micah Parsons, the linebacker out of Penn State, to Denver. And we've talked about this guy more than once on the show. A very athletic, explosive linebacker. He can hit, he can run, he can blitz. He does need some work in coverage. And our draft expert here, Tom Downey, gives a nice player comp. Jalen Smith a little bit. An athletic player, but needs some work on the coverage side of things. However, just the same amount of upside as Jalen Smith does, minus the injury issues. Now, there are some character concerns to jump into. We'll talk about it for a brief second here in a little bit. But Micah Parsons, certainly a player with the upside to shore up the linebacker spot for the Broncos for a decade plus. Now, you look at his stats at 2019. Obviously, had a great year. Opted out of the 2020 season, but over 100 tackles, made plays in the backfield, had a few pass breakups here or there as well, but that also means that he was picked on more than a few times in coverage as well. But the potential is there, not just as a player who can stop the run, but a player who can blitz the quarterback, get 7, 8 sacks, a potential player who can drop in coverage and be fairly effective due to those athletic traits. I think Micah Parsons is a great scheme fit in Denver. You know, Fangio loves to get his linebackers out in space. Yes, he likes them in coverage as well, which is where Parsons would need to grow, but this defense allows him to make plays on the ball. That is where he is best, as disrupting the offense. And I think he'd be successful in that regard, being able to learn behind as well A.J. Johnson and Josie Jewell to start things out. Now, we did touch on the character concerns, and Micah Parsons actually touched on that as well. This was about a week or two ago, so, you know, a little bit old news. But at the same time, I wanted to show this quote because I think it shows a little bit about how Micah Parsons sees that time at Penn State and how he's moving forward. Said, quote, "Obviously, people had some concerns about the things that had happened, but at the end of the day, I was a kid. I was 17 or 18. We all made mistakes when we were 17 or 18. I'm not going to let it control or dictate the person I am now. I'm not going to let something that happened 4 years ago dictate who I'm becoming and the father I want to be." So you have to hope, obviously, with Parsons, that stuff is behind him and he can move forward and become the best version of himself. But it does remain to be seen whether that can be the case. And those concerns are a red flag for some teams. Reports that a dozen, maybe 15 teams have taken Parsons out of their draft boards due to those concerns. Won't dive into the maturity side and the details all too much. You can look it up for yourself. But certainly something to keep in consideration with Micah Parsons. Now, I want to ask you guys, should Denver draft Micah Parsons at number 9 overall? A simple Y for yes or N for no will suffice. But I want you to get your votes in the comments section. Chat Sports is all about interaction with the audience. We want to hear what you have to say about all the news and rumors that we're bringing to you here on the Broncos Breakdown. All right, let's look to the second round now. First of all, some notable picks before number 40 overall. Azeez Ojulari goes number 30 to Buffalo. Another edge, Jason Owe, 31 to Kansas City. A pair of running backs, Travis Etienne and Javonte Williams, 34 and 36. That's something I've talked about the Broncos potentially addressing on day 2. And then Gregory Rousseau, the edge out of Miami, number 35 to Atlanta overall. Leaving them in Mel Kiper's mock draft with Kelvin Joseph, the cornerback out of Kentucky, a guy that we haven't talked about a ton here on the channel. Quick and twitchy corner here out of cornerback. He's got great ball skills, a ball hawk in a sense, definitely fits that mold. He only started one season at Kentucky, started his career at LSU, transferred and sat out the 2019 season and spent 2020 with the Wildcats. And another player with character, red flags and things to keep in consideration. Had to opt out of the 2020 season. And it was kind of a mutual decision because Mark Stoops reportedly was not seeing the effort that he wanted out of Kelvin Joseph and said, hey, you're better off opting out at this point. You might as well just move on, prepare for the draft, deal with what you want to deal with. And so Kelvin Joseph opted out. So that's definitely something that I think is rubbing teams the wrong way a little bit, but the upside is there. And when you look at the Broncos cornerback depth chart, he could slot in behind Darby and Fuller, learn for them from a year. Will Fuller's only on a 1-year contract. Darby's contract is movable after 2 years. And so you could see Kelvin Joseph get some reps right away, and then eventually potentially grow into a bigger role with the Broncos, but offers some upside. Had a solid season with Kentucky until he opted out. Just need to make sure the off-the-field stuff it really isn't going to be a hindrance. And the good news is about the Broncos is they've got plenty of veterans to take Joseph under their wing and show him the right way. So you saw Micah Parsons at 9, Kelvin Joseph at number 40, all defense in the first 2 rounds for Denver. What's your grade for this mock draft? A, B, C, D, or F? Get them in the comment section. I think it's a pretty solid mock draft. I don't love Kelvin Joseph at number 40, so I'll probably go with a B. But Micah Parsons is certainly a player that fits with the Broncos really well. I've talked about him at number 9 as a potential option depending on how the board falls. So I think it's a pretty solid draft, but I want to hear from you guys in the comments section. Now, before we move on to our next story, be sure you are subscribed to the Broncos Breakdown here by Chat Sports. You see the link below me right here on the screen, youtube.com/Broncos TV. Hit that big red subscribe button below this video and join the channel. We're trying to get to 3,000 subscribers by draft night, about 2.5 weeks away, and I think we can get there. We're not too far off, just a little over 500 to go, but I need your help to do it. If you want more news and rumors, more draft coverage, the 2021 season coming soon. We'll have more coverage after the draft. This is the place for you. Hit that big red button and subscribe today. All right, our next story here as we jump into some more draft talk. How about drafting Rashawn Slater? John Cronenberg of Mile High Huddle, the beat team the Broncos beat with Sports Illustrated, said the Broncos should target Slater as Jawan James insurance, and we'll dive into that side of things a little bit more as well. A technically sound, really mobile lineman. He's got some power for his size, and like I say, he could be an option for Denver at number 9, depending on how the draft plays out. Maybe a cornerback goes early that Denver like. Maybe Micah Parsons goes off the board earlier than many expected. Slater is an option for Denver to consider. Now, the Jawan James side of things, because as you all know, Jawan James has not played a lot of time with the Denver Broncos since he signed that contract in 2019, which made him, at the time, the highest paid right tackle in the NFL. Certainly has not lived up to that contract size, and this is a big year for him. He needs to show that he can be consistent, stay on the field, regain the trust of his teammates after opting out of the 2020 season. I think he can do it, but Rashawn Slater provides some nice insurance in case Jawan James continues this trend that we've seen. He had a really strong 2019 season, Rashawn Slater did, before opting out. 0 sacks, 1 hit allowed, and just 4 hurries. Draft scouts love this guy. Teams apparently are buzzing about his potential at the next level. And as you look at the Broncos depth chart, could slot in a couple different places. A lot of people think he's going to wind up playing left tackle. But he has the size and the build to play on the right side, maybe even shift inside at guard. And I think teams might even try him at guard to start out, depending on where he goes. So I think he's got a couple different places he could fit in on this Broncos offensive line. But that big position I'm looking for is Jawan James at right tackle, which leads me into my next question for you. Do you trust Jawan James as the right tackle next season? Type your T for trust if you do, or if you don't trust Jawan James, type DT for don't trust. As of right now, I don't trust him. I mean, plain and simple, it's hard to when he's played 3 games since signing that deal 2 seasons ago. I'm going to type my DT for don't trust, but I want to hear from you in the comments yet again. Some news here on the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports, as the Broncos have announced on Tuesday that they will skip the voluntary portion of offseason workouts due to COVID-19 concerns. This is an interesting story to dive into more here. The offseason training program begins April 19th. It's supposed to be potentially all virtual. That's what it was last year. That's what a lot of players are fighting for again this year as the NFLPA works with the NFL and the administration there to try and sort something out. They're not the only ones who have opted out. The Seahawks, the Buccaneers have also announced today that they are opting out of these offseason voluntary workouts. That's the key here. They are not mandatory. So it's not as though players will be fined or anything or penalized if they choose to opt out of these workouts. And it's a fairly reasonable argument, obviously, given what's happened over the last year. And we'll jump into the NFLPA statement on behalf of the Denver Broncos, saying, with offseason programs starting in less than a week and without adequate protocols in place to order us players to return safely, we will be exercising our right not to participate in voluntary offseason workouts. Goes on to say COVID-19 remains a serious threat to our families and to our communities, and it makes no sense to us as players to put ourselves at risk during this dead period. Positivity rates in our city are higher than they were at this time last year, and we know players have been infected at club facilities in recent weeks. We hope players across the NFL work with our union, as we did, to get all the facts so every player can make an informed decision. Now, this is an interesting situation that has developed, and I think over the days and weeks to come, we'll see more teams start to opt out of these programs with the voluntary workouts and the off-season training program starting in just a week on April 19th. Now, Ryan O'Halloran also had this to say. A prominent figure in the Denver area said, per source, Broncos players were the first team to contact the union about putting out a statement encouraging players to stay away from off-season workouts. The union had an all-player call last week, which was followed by calls with team reps. The anticipation is more teams follow. Now, this isn't a big surprise, and I think you can tell by this point this is how I believe. So the Broncos had a team meeting led by Brandon McManus, who is the NFLPA representative for the Denver Broncos, and Justin Simmons, obviously a huge leader on the team, to discuss this. And apparently it was fairly overwhelming in that most of the players wanted to opt out. Now, there were some who cited those reps. They need the reps. They need the conditioning program. But at the end of the day, you're talking about human safety, and we can dive into the politics all we want. That's not what we do here at the Broncos Breakdown. We're talking sports. We're sticking straight football here and understanding the players' perspectives. There are players with family members with health concerns, children. Look at Ryan Switzer, for example, and his child and everything he's gone through. He's not the only one. There are players who have to keep their families in mind. Can't just stay away from them for weeks on edge because they got to get in shape. And they can get in shape at home. Now, there are studies that have shown that the injury rate went up last season because of a lack of conditioning. But don't you think the NFL should be able to learn from these mistakes and adapt and find a way to gear a program to that and maintain those high conditioning levels? You'd think so. But we'll see what happens, obviously. More teams will come. Like I said, the Broncos opting out of voluntary off-season workouts due to COVID-19 concerns, which are due to begin next week. They're not the only ones. Tampa Bay and Seattle also announcing on Tuesday they would do the same thing. And at the end of the day, you accept it, you move on. The Broncos, I think, will be in shape. They will have time in training camp after the draft and in the preseason to get ready for the 2021 season. So not a true concern there in my eyes. But hey, Broncos news, Broncos breakdown, Broncos bring the news to you. What is your confidence level in the Denver Broncos next season on a scale of 1 to 10? I'm not going to lie, after this offseason, my confidence level's getting up there. I want to say about a 7 in their ability to really play well. A lot of questions around the quarterback position still, a couple more holes to fill. But this team is starting to come into shape, and you'd hope with the draft here in a couple weeks, they could really round out their roster and field a winning team in 2021. So, scale of 1 to 10, let me know your level of confidence in the Denver Broncos in the 2021 NFL season.